Hello, I'm Sherry Harlan, Community Outreach Coordinator with Reid Health, and welcome to a special edition of Reid Beside You. Today, our guest is Chad Priest, Indiana CEO of the American Red Cross. Welcome, Chad.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And explain to me how that you became part of the American Red Cross.
Well, you know, like a lot of folks, my Red Cross story started when I was young. So I of course, learned to swim, and that was my first interaction with the Red Cross. And then I became a lifeguard during high school, and at some time along that way, I started teaching CPR and first aid classes at the Red Cross, teaching the local businesses, and this was all in Indianapolis. And then volunteered to be a disaster worker, and did that for a while, and went off to college, and then had a life, was in the military, did all that. And just about a year and a half ago, I got a call from the chair of our board in the state who said, we're looking for a new CEO, and you consider, coming to talk with us. And for me, it was a huge and humbling honor to be asked to come back to a place that had really formed me as a young person. So I got a long Red Cross story. I think a lot of folks do.
Well, that's great. And then it mirrored your education background?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have a lot of crazy different experiences. I think I'd be lying to you if it was me saying I had all this planned out. I think I've had a little bit of career changes in education. But yeah, so I'm a healthcare provider. I'm a nurse by training, and also happen to be a lawyer and have done some weird stuff. But throughout my entire career, I've really been focused on how we think about and build resilient communities who are prepared to bounce back better when bad things happen in disaster. And so this is a really natural extension for me at the Red Cross.
Oh, that's great. And help me understand the structure for our region, because we have such a vast variety, anywhere from the urban areas and Indianapolis to more of a rural, as for East Central Indiana.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're responsible for 87 of the 92 counties in Indiana.
Wow.
So the counties that are near Cincinnati and Louisville are connected to those metro areas. But all the way from Gary to Evansville, from Richmond to Terre Haute, all points in between, the Red Cross provides a seamless set of services to Hoosiers. And we're organized with a regional team that is headquartered not only in Indianapolis, actually. Some of our regional staff and our leaders are located up and down state. And then in each area of the state, we have executive directors, which are responsible for smaller geographic units. So we have an executive director in Gary and one in Evansville and Fort Wayne. And then I serve as actually that sort of executive director for an area that begins in Richmond and ends in Indianapolis. So a large area of that I-70 corridor. And then, of course, staff that help us coordinate our activities. But the beauty of the Red Cross is that we have about 450 some odd employees in the state of Indiana. The vast majority of those work in blood services, delivering on our biomedical services mission. On the humanitarian service side, which is where most folks interact with the Red Cross, about 50 employees. 91% of our entire workforce is made up of volunteers. So the real structure of the Red Cross is the volunteers here in Richmond and throughout Wayne County that actually lead and carry out our services. Our job as staff is to steward them, support them, and sort of let them go. And we're certainly seeing that right here in Richmond.
Now, where do you usually find the volunteers? Probably, I'm just assuming that a lot of those people have had experiences like you did from swimming and just learning about what the Red Cross do.
You know, we get volunteers from all over the place, as you can imagine, and we serve and work with about 5 generations at the same time. So I think one of the things that people forget is that, if you think about those just being born today, so if you think of the Red Cross as a timeline, people's first interaction with the Red Cross usually happens as they're being born. So the nurses and doctors and the technicians that are working with you, perhaps at Reid Hospital, perhaps at others, they may have gotten their CPR training from the Red Cross, right? They may have been nurse assistants trained by us or through us. Then you grow up and we teach you how to swim, and then when your parents finally let you swim by yourself, we train the lifeguards that are looking after you. Maybe you go off to the military, we help you there. So you really have this long span, and you're right, I think folks are drawn to what that story meant to them, and they come back and volunteer. But we're also unabashedly looking for new volunteers who are looking to make a difference in their community in ways that really we're one of the few places that you can come and do the sort of work we do. So a volunteer can raise their hand on a Monday, and by Wednesday or Thursday, Jerry Jarvis, our disaster program specialist in this area, will have you out at a fire or at a disaster scene. And so it's a mix.
And so many people are familiar with the American Red Cross by just disasters. But on a daily, can you give me an example, just daily,
Absolutely.
what you do for the communities?
Absolutely. So we do 5 things at the Red Cross. We're 50% roughly of the blood supply in the state of Indiana.
Okay.
That's a huge part of our mission, making sure that we have safe and reliable blood products to help folks who are sick. We are trainers for health education of CPR and first aid and swimming and all those sorts of things. A lot of our international services are actually delivered right here in Indiana. So the fact is the American Red Cross is all over the world providing services in times of disaster. We have 15 permanent offices around the world. But a lot of our international services start right here. So someone here in Richmond, for example, may have a family member in another country, and maybe there was an event or a disaster and they can't find them. They walk into our office here, and we begin the process of connecting them. We do that hundreds of times a year here in Indiana. And so a lot of our international services are about connecting with prisoners of war, prisoners of conscience, all around the world, which we do right here from Indiana. We are a huge veterans and military service organization. You know, when we got started, it was Clara Barton during the Civil War,
right,
connecting Civil War soldiers with their family members. Didn't matter if they were fighting for the North or the South. We still maintain that sense of impartiality in our work. And just here in Wayne County, for example, we connected 100 different families to military members to their families during times of crisis. So when a soldier or a sailor, an airman or a Marine is stationed overseas perhaps, and a family member back home is sick or needs, is in a medical emergency, and that soldier, she needs to come home, one of our jobs is to connect and make sure that we verify, yes, this family member is sick, yes, this soldier needs to come home, and when she arrives back home, volunteer will help her and get her on her way. And then finally, obviously our disaster services, and it's what we call blue skies, right? So it's the gray skies of those times we all know about. It's when the tornado's coming, right, or the flood. And we're fortunate in Indiana. Those events are not as common as in, for example, Gulf Coast states, right, which deal with hurricanes. Now we get our share, as you know. We get
tornadoes.
Yeah, that's right. We get a few spring storms every year, and we plan for those. But during blue skies, when we're not in active emergencies, we do about 8 disaster events every day in the state of Indiana. And most of those are home fires.
I was going to ask you about the home fires.
Absolutely.
Because that's another thing I think people have become accustomed to hearing Red Cross, and did you call the Red Cross after there was a fire? And so locally, if there was a fire, how do they connect with the Red Cross locally?
Yeah. So generally speaking, fire departments, volunteer firemen, city fire departments throughout Wayne County will know to call us directly. Sometimes that may not happen. Sometimes that may not happen when it appears as though a family may not need support, but then later they figure out, you know what, we actually do need some support. We like to get those calls. We want all of them. We want every chance to go out and deliver services. And the way that works is a volunteer like you or me at home volunteers to let their phone ring at 2 in the morning, and they will get out in their car, whether it's snowing or sunny, whatever, and we'll go out and deliver what is a very simple service. We give every home fire victim a blanket, maybe a hug. I always joke that it could be 90 degrees and hot, and you're still getting a blanket.
Okay.
A cup of coffee, a bottle of water, a hug, which really means more than anything at that point, especially when it comes from your neighbor. And then a credit card with a few $100s of preloaded financial assistance so that you can immediately get the things you need so that the next day when you wake up, you can start the road to recovery, because, you know, every piece of clothing is now gone. It doesn't matter if it was burnt. Once that smell of that smoke's in there, they're done. New dishes, all those things that we take for granted. And then the next day, coming into our office to meet with a volunteer caseworker to begin to put you on that road to recovery. And our model, again, these aren't professionally trained staff members. These are professionally trained volunteer neighbors.
Right.
It's a beautiful humanitarian sort of cycle.
Which leads me to ask, for a short amount of time, there were people that didn't realize that after you left one building on like North A Street,
yes, correct,
that you were actually on Woods Drive, but now you have a new location.
Yes. So, you know, in Richmond, you know, and we're a huge organization nationally. This area actually used to be part of the Dayton, Ohio sort of chapter of the Red Cross. And we're really glad that it's back in Indiana. I mean, Richmond's an important city in Indiana. It's a major economic hub for the city. You are the east to west bound gateway of our state. I mean, we are glad to be here. We have always had an office in Richmond. We've always been active in Richmond. We have not been as active as we would have liked. And so we have taken some steps this year to really move in that direction. One is we have a disaster program specialist staff member who actually lives in Richmond. That has helped us immensely to recruit volunteers from the community. Once we had a stable number of volunteers, and again, that is the lifeblood of our organization. Once we had those folks from Richmond, we felt it was the right time to reinvest in the city and to bring our own footprint a little larger. And so we have just moved into offices at 829 East Main Street, right on Main Street. Okay. It's a beautiful old building, and we're going to be doing some renovation work inside the building, and then we'll have the official opening in July. But the building's basically open now. Volunteers will staff that. We'll begin offering CPR and first aid classes again in the building, and it'll be a focal point. So we've actually never left, but we are well aware that for us to be successful, we let go for a period of time of some of these core things we need to be doing. Interacting with groups like the Chamber of Commerce, you know, being engaged with neighborhood associations. And so what I hope folks in Richmond and really throughout Wayne County will see is you won't see me, but seeing our volunteers, right? Your neighbors who suddenly embody the Red Cross and really trying to come back into the community in a meaningful way. And we're really happy and excited to do that in Richmond.
Well, we're excited, and on a separate note, I'm very excited because I work with our patient financial services, and Reid invested in downtown as well. Oh, so great. We have over 140 employees downtown, as well as work with the Downtown Business Group and Center City Development. So we're always happy and welcoming for new businesses to come downtown.
Well, we can't match we can't match the Reid footprint for sure, but we're really happy to be a small part of it.
So thank you for investing in downtown.
Yeah, of course. It's a beautiful downtown. I mean, it's a lovely downtown. And I think it's a great.
And more things are moving downtown, and the re-inviting, getting people, as well as it's good because it's close to bus stops, so people that have limited transportation can actually walk to your office from the bus stop.
Absolutely. And you know, I think so much of what we're trying to do in building resilient communities, we've got decades of social science research that tells us that one of the key, and you'll know this, and certainly Reid embodies this in terms of your health and outreach work, is that one of the keys to making sure that a community is safe is to make sure that citizens interact with each other.
Yes.
And that is harder and harder in our culture now.
Right.
So I mean, it's very, you know, do you know your neighbors? Do you know their names? We might take that for granted, but the truth is that that isn't always easy. So our Main Street strategy in Richmond, which we're actually mirroring all over the state. So really, Wayne County is the first place. Okay. Wayne, Kosciuszko County is another one where we've done the same thing. Gives folks a chance in a natural environment to be in closer proximity to one another, which is so important. Those interactions make all the difference.
And other parts of Wayne County are actually investing in Main Street status as well. I know Centerville's in the middle of investing in their Main Street, Hagerstown, and Cambridge City. So
that's great.
It just covers the entire area. So we're very excited. The another thing I wanted to ask: some of the initiatives that the Red Cross does, in addition to the other 5 areas that you do on daily, and I'd read about the pillowcase project.
Yeah.
And I found that pretty interesting. Can you explain to our viewers what the pillowcase project is?
Yeah, absolutely. So after Hurricane Katrina, the executive that works in in New Orleans, noticed something, which was all these college kids were leaving, you know, the dorms at Tulane, these various universities, with their pillowcases just stuffed full of their stuff as they had to sort of quickly evacuate. And ever since World War II, the Red Cross has done youth education and outreach. And in fact, that's another place where we touch folks. And I remember when someone came into our class and taught us stop, drop, and roll, and, you know, fire safety and those sorts of things. The Pillowcase Project is our modern sort of take on traditional disaster education for grades 3 through 5, roughly. And in that program, they learn all hazard safety. So what do you do in a fire? You know, you've got 2 minutes to get out of your house and stay out of your house, call 911, those sorts of things. Also in Indiana, particularly about tornado activity, right? How to get to a basement, what to do when you hear a tornado siren. And increasingly, also thinking about what to do when man-made events occur, which is an unfortunate reality in today's world. But the program is slightly different in that the kids are given these pillowcases, which are actually co-branded with Disney, and Disney's a big partner with us. So there's Disney characters on the pillowcases, and they get to actually draw what are resilience images on the front. So they may draw a picture of something that makes them feel strong, and so some of the kids will draw a shield, maybe, or something. And we talk a lot about one of the big things we have not taught children around disasters in the past, but it's so important, is it's not enough to know, hey, I got to get out of the house, or I got to call 911. I mean, those are necessary, but not sufficient to ensure that we're doing the right thing. Kids need to know to calm down, to feel safe, to breathe. And so we actually teach kids using guided meditation how to breathe with color, to think about when they're in a stressful, tense situation, how to vary within 2 to 3 seconds, calm themselves down enough so that they can begin to make better decisions under tough conditions. Because for a small child, picking up the phone, calling 911, or having to go to a neighbor's house to get help, that is not an easy thing. And so we really have started taking a psychological approach to understand how do you build a condition or state in which that child is likely to be successful in crisis. So we're really happy with this program. It's getting rave reviews, and of course, like every Red Cross program, it's totally free. We're looking to partner with as many folks as we can, and so we'll be all over the county, and really the entire area in central Indiana, from Richmond all the way to Indianapolis, to try and hit as many 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders as we can with this information.
And getting the disaster preparedness is something I don't think we really look at being in the Midwest and East Central Indiana. We always think, oh, those things happen in larger cities. So are there other things that you teach and work with the children as well as the other citizens in more of a rural areas?
Yeah, the truth is that disasters don't care where you live. They don't know your zip code, and they don't care, right? So the tornado doesn't you know, and tragically in August we had a string of tornadoes that actually hit repetitively in Kokomo, if you'll recall, August of last year, and that's the 2nd year in a row that we've had tornadoes on the same track in Kokomo. I don't think the tornadoes are going to do the same thing a 3rd year in a row. So I think what we need to be prepared for in Indiana is that they'll be everywhere. Rural areas, I think there's a deceptive sense of safety in rural areas, right? Because you've got a lot of open space. So you may have smaller towns, of course, big city like Richmond, but then you have smaller towns. And the truth is that the infrastructure is so sparse in rural areas that even moderate damage becomes really a big deal. And so in many ways in rural areas, having training, having resilient businesses that can reopen quickly after a disaster are really so important. We see that every year in hurricane season. I spent 16 days in North Carolina after Hurricane Matthew this fall in a very rural part of North Carolina, and the same message is always the case, is that you don't have a Walmart that can just open its doors. So that local mom and pop store that may only have 1 or 2 employees, or maybe the owner is the only employee, if they can't open their business, then neighbors can't come and get the things they need. The economic engine driving revitalization is stalled.
Correct.
So in rural areas, it's more important than ever that we make sure our businesses are ready, that residents are ready, because as I said before, these storms don't care where you are. They'll go anywhere.
Definitely. So I know one of the challenges as I moved from the city back to Richmond, I always knew in case of an emergency where we were supposed to have a meetings place, where to be. Reid has those rules because we're a healthcare facility. But
you're required to.
Some of the smaller businesses don't have the, they haven't put those things in place. So, and you could probably design a plan.
We would love to, and we have a program called Ready Rating. It starts online. It's very easy. You can go Ready Rating, Red Cross Ready Rating. You can just Google it. It'll ask you some questions about your business, and it will spit out a plan. And then if you call our office right here in Richmond, and we'll have a disaster specialist or a volunteer come out and talk with you. Say, hey, what can we do to make sure that your business stays open? It's important to us, and it's important to the community.
I'm sure our viewers would they will be giving you a call
Well,
so
we would
that
welcome it. We
they
would
could
welcome
do
it.
that. And another thing, the home fires, since that's such a big emphasis and so many people
Yeah.
make sure that they hear American Red Cross and think of like fires. So what? Explain to me some of those a campaign that you have.
Of course.
Regarding.
So we're happy to respond to fires. We want to respond to as many home fires as we can. I'd love it though if we didn't, and I'd love it if we reduced the impact and
More of a
burden of home
prevention.
fires. Yeah. And so one of the ways is smoke alarms, and they seem easy. It seems simple. And a lot of places have given away smoke alarms for a long time, and we sort of say, not jokingly, but sort of ironically, that firemen find those free alarms melted without a battery on the counter in the kitchen after the fire, right? And that's because we're humans, and you know, the alarm goes off when we're cooking, and we put tin foil over it, or we take the battery out. We all do those things.
Or the battery starts to beep.
Absolutely, that chirp in the middle of the night, and it's easier to just rip it apart. Knowing that, and knowing that we wanted to find ways to get neighbors in close proximity to each other, we launched our home fire campaign. Okay. And it's a real simple program. We take teams of 2 or 3 folks, and we go and we knock on your door. And if you let us in, and we're real friendly, so please let us in when we knock, we'll install up to 3 smoke alarms for free in your home. We drill them to the wall. They've got 10-year built-in lithium-ion batteries, so you don't have to worry about that chirping for at least 10 years, at which case you can call us. We'll come put another alarm in. And we've saved.
I'm gonna invite you guys to my house here.
Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to come to your house. We've saved 11 lives in Indiana since this program was launched, and that's really great. But here's what's even better about this program, is that it gives us a chance for a neighbor to walk into a neighbor's home, and I have to tell you, that isn't normal nowadays.
Right.
And once we see how our neighbors live differently, we see their unmet needs, we see what may be food insecurity or fall risk, things that you all I know care very much about,
right,
because those are drivers of admissions which are costly and that devastate families, et cetera. It gives the neighbors a chance to do something about it, because you can't, once you've seen how your neighbors live, and I'm not saying even if they live what we might say badly, I'm just saying period, right? Once you've peeked into that and you've developed a relationship, I'll tell you, you can't undo it. And that means when that snow comes this winter, and you may have a bad back and you're unable to shovel yourself out, your neighbor is more likely to come over and help you than had they not gone in the first time. And so we're anticipating blanketing Wayne County with this campaign. We've installed 650 alarms since we began the campaign. I'd love to install several thousand more next fiscal year. So for us, that's June to June. And we'll be looking to partners to help us do that, because again, we don't come in with a team of people on a bus from out of the city. We look right here for volunteers.
So I'm going to tell our viewers that we are going to be doing everything we can to find some partners for you, and making sure that the viewers definitely contact the American Red Cross.
We'd love it. Whether you can give us an hour or you want to come volunteer full time, we will find a role for you.
Great. What's some other campaigns that you have?
Our big push right now as we go into the summer is always lifeguard education. You know, this is something we don't talk much about, except this year we're really running into a shortage of lifeguards. And for the last several years, lifeguards have been
I've heard that there were shortages for the last.
And
what do you think is causing that?
Well, it's funny, because I asked the same question, because I thought it's pretty much the coolest job ever. You sit outside in the sun, you twirl a whistle. In most instances, you don't have to do much. Well, lifeguarding has changed a lot since I did it.
Right.
If you've seen lifeguards, you'll see they're far more vigilant. They're moving around. They're constantly scanning the environment. And one of the things they're not doing is they're not on their phones. And what I'm hearing from pool operators is that they're having trouble recruiting lifeguards because young folks don't want to put their phones down. And they want a job where they can be more connected to their phone, and so I think
that's kind of hard if you're on your phone.
It's not very safe.
Trying to be vigilant. That's
not very safe.
The contradiction there.
So we're worried about lifeguards coming in, and then spring storms. So right now we are in the peak of spring storm season. We're 2 weeks here into April. And we literally in the morning wake up and look at the news, and we have people assessing situational awareness around the state every day, identifying threats and being good partners with our emergency management agencies around the state so that we can be ready when something happens. And unfortunately, we can guarantee you there will be a storm that will require our services. So for us, it's a waiting game of when and how do we make sure resources and personnel are in the right place to respond quickly.
So in cases like that, then are you often have to recruit some of the people from Indianapolis to come?
Well, it's
to
funny, you
other
know, in
areas, or-
Kokomo, for example, which was a big event for us, we recruited within 48 hours 348 new volunteers. And they showed up in Kokomo, in Indianapolis, South Bend, and Fort Wayne, and they were trained immediately and sent out into the field. And that's in addition to a very huge core of stable workers. So we like to recruit in the communities. Sometimes these events, while tragic, do galvanize communities, and they create a reflection point for people to say, yeah, I want to help, and we certainly want to be available when that happens.
Great. We have, the other thing is, once again, I do want to highlight that you will be opening your
Yes.
local office. Now we're going to put that in for, get everyone ready for, we expect a big fun blast in July.
Yes, July 10th, we'll be hosting a public open house, and we'll be welcoming people in the community to come by and visit, and we'll make sure that information about that is spread out to our community members and partners, including the hospital and this show and others, so that we can get the word out. We're excited about the office, we're excited about being there, and we're really looking forward to recruiting new folks here in Richmond and throughout the county that can help us with our mission.
That is wonderful. And we look forward to, and we'll make sure that we provide the contact information. So as we are a great community that works together, and I know that we're going to be very supportive of your new office, and I'm sure we'll gather some more volunteers for you.
Thank you.
And we
appreciate it.
look forward to the grand opening. And also, before we finish that, just real quickly, I know that you moved into a new headquarters.
We did. Yes, we did in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Yeah. Lovely building, 15th and Meridian, and if you're ever in Indianapolis, we encourage anyone to stop by. It's your Red Cross building, you know, it's not the Indianapolis main office. This is your building, and we'd love to have you.
Okay, so we have a lot of people that are on the road a lot.
Absolutely.
And we go back and forth to Indianapolis for business as well as for pleasure. So we'll make sure that if you're on Meridian.
15th and Meridian, 1510 North Meridian. Come by and visit. We'd love to see you. You can walk in and get a tour of the place. It's really gorgeous. It's a stunning building where we've really tried to economically make the best use of space.
Okay. And we want to thank Chad Priest, the CEO, Indiana American Red Cross, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we welcome you back to the community, even though you never left. But we'll have a bigger presence because we're downtown. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.